Hey everybody, good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the Witching Hour podcast. I'm your host, John Royceland. With me this evening is this guy right here. No interviews tonight. What I am doing, however, is something a little bit different. Um, I normally don't do solo shows anymore. I try to hold out and do interviews or at least have a guest and discuss a topic. But I wanted to try something a little bit different. Like I mentioned, I'm actually going to be doing a concert review this evening. What concert you're talking about? Good question. It is 30 Years of River Runs Red by Life of Agony. 30 years ago. Woo! 1993. God damn, that puts it into perspective. I remember the first day I heard this album. I had actually relocated from the East Coast. I was out in Chicago. I had gone to school for a while, had been working, living with my father, and had just recently moved back into town, into Maryland. And old friend of mine, Craig, picks me up. He's like, son, you got to check this shit out. Bzz, pops a little CD in. Wow. The heaviness, the emotional story, fucking hooked. So needless to say, anytime the band came around, there we were. We were all instant fans, my whole crew and I. Um, many years later, I want to say 27, 28. Here I am, big grown boy, wife, and Life of Agony just happens to be coming through town through Baltimore. I reached out to bassist, lyricist, artist extraordinaire, uh, Mr. Alan Robert. Reached out to him in hopes of being able to catch up with him and do a small interview with him prior to the show coming through Baltimore in lieu of his horror art. And by all means, and he was a great guy. Had me come in before the show. I got to see guitarist Joey Z up there strumming out and tuning up before the show. It was great. He just kind of looks over, points and smiles, and did my little bit with Alan, and we left. Thanked him. Had a great show. 3 years later, 2 years later, I cannot remember. My apologies for that. I catch wind of 30 years of River Runs Red tour. Of course, I reached out to Alan, asked him if there was any possibility I could get a press pass in hopes of being able to meet up with him, get a couple words in honor of the tour. Unfortunately, he did not have time. They were their personal schedule. It was hit or miss, and I respected that. I have no problem whatsoever with that. He's a busy man, keeping the tour going and so forth. But he was still generous enough. He left two passes for my wife and I to go and enjoy the show, and I got some great pictures, some great footage. Um, had a great night. The show opened up. It was played at Baltimore Soundstage in the Inner Harbor. If you're anywhere in the tri-state area, I definitely suggest that you keep an eye on this place, especially being a metalhead and hardcore shows. Phenomenal place. They are really keeping that genre alive, which I really love and appreciate. Because there's not many places anymore that are going to put up a whole death metal fest for you. Um, but with that being said, um, great show. Um, it was um, I'm sorry, it was a weeknight. It was about three-quarter capacity. Coventry Carols, Long Island, I believe, a three-piece indie persuasion band played. Great guys, great set. They made a fan out of me. If you're expecting it to have been a normal style opener, uh, to open up for a thrash or metal band, no, it's not. Again, indie persuasion. but still a great, great band, of which I was lucky enough to catch up um, with their guitarist and vocalist Soda on a previous interview from a couple weeks ago. So hopefully you guys will look that up and enjoy that as well. They put on a great show, a lot of emotion. Next, one of my one of my all-time favorites again. I was very, very fortunate because this tour, like I said, had a lot of impact. Sick of It All hit the stage. My God, I was ear to ear grin. Honestly, those 30 years melted away, and um, to me, they put on probably one of the best shows I'd ever seen them play. Still 200% energy from all of them. Just phenomenal, phenomenal show. I was so glad my wife was able to go because she had never seen them before, and I turned her on to them. So she's become a fan of them, and then getting to see them, she was like, "My God, I missed." She grew up in Florida. The group of people that she was with, they weren't into the music scene like my friends and I were up here in Annapolis and Baltimore area. Half of my friends that I hung out with were all in bands, so I was constantly in the music scene. Um, so a lot of my older stuff is new stuff for her. But a phenomenal show. Um, and then here we go, headlining act, and so much emotion. For those of you who are true Life of Agony fans that have been for a long time, uh, people who even are just, at least maybe you're not a fan, but you're familiar with their work, or you hear the name River Runs Red, you're like, oh yeah, that fucking album, that shit's deep, son. It's a concept album. uh the whole album from start to finish is sadly about a young boy in high school, um troubled teen, living in a not so good household. um there are small interjections, if you will, um start the story, little bits and pieces of, you can hear the boy coming home, brings the door open and you can hear screaming in the background, or he's got messages on his answering machine, or his boss yelling at him and fires him, or the next one is, he's not going to make it through school, he's not going to graduate, blah 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 blah, and all these things just build up, and the songs go so well with it. Lyrically, the album is heart wrenching, heartbreaking, and so many people used that as an inspiration. There were people. I'm a big guy. Okay, I know you can't really tell it from this small little picture. You're just seeing Santa Claus with tattoos. I know, I get that. But there were guys there. Everyone's out there when the band's playing. That they're singing along with it, and they're fisting, and they're head banging, and they're crying. I saw over a dozen people that were true fans, and so many people that I've seen even after the show talking and telling, hey, Joey Z, you know I've got your logo tattooed on me because it represents my brother, blah blah blah, and your songs helped me get through. And as upsetting and depressing as some of the lyrics are, so many people could could get a hold of that and be like, these motherfuckers are writing these songs and playing these songs, and they understand what I'm going through. And damn, I mean, after 30 years, it still got to people. And I was, well, so 30 years ago, I would have been, by the time the main band came on, headliners, I would have been, one, on the floor in the pit, two, drunk. So nowadays, as a big boy, I actually didn't even have a drop to drink that night. I let my wife have a couple drinks so that way I could be the responsible one. Not saying she's not, but she could enjoy herself and I could drive home. Point being, we sat side stage on Alan's side, actually, against the bar the entire night, and I was just glued. Their performance, their emotion that they put into performing live, and the emotion that they feed off of each other while performing live. These songs mean so much to them. It's like, it's beautifully heartbreaking, if that makes any sense. There's so much emotion between all of them that these songs ring true, and they have become almost like emotional anthems, if you will, for 30 years of fans all across the world. And it was kind of funny. There was a couple younger women that were there, and they had been drinking, and they're like, my God, it's full of old people here. Oh, yeah. It says 30 years of what the hell did you expect? But even after the entire show was over, or let me rephrase that, after the entire album had been played from start to finish, there was no mixing it up. It was like putting the headphones on, press and play on your old CD player back in the day, and not stopping until it was over. That's what the band gave you through and through. And I was actually kind of wondering, because when it did end, I'm looking at the clock thinking, all right, well, maybe it's going to be an early night. Hell no. Hell no. These sons of bitches still ripped out, I would have to say, another 8 to 10 songs, I think. Phenomenal. Phenomenal show as always. Um, I'm glad to see that it wasn't a huge tour. But what I am glad to see, sorry about that. What I am glad to see is that it has been picked back up. I know that they are going to be doing a summer European tour. I am hoping to get Alan in the hot seat here and do an interview with him. I did talk to him briefly after the show when he was still on stage and he was winding up his cords and putting all of his gear together. I thanked him, obviously, told him it was a great performance and he appreciated it. Asked him when he thought he might have time. He's like, let me just get through the tour, get home, get some time to breathe, and then we'll sit and chat. Well, I was going to reach out to him and see if he wanted to join me possibly soon. And then, like I said, I found out that they are going to be going back on the road with some more 30 years to spread the love for, which I'm thrilled about. I truly am. That is one band that has gone from all different volumes, if I will, of music throughout the years. River Runs Red, obviously being their debut album, produced by Josh Silver. For those of you that were old Typo fans, as I always have been, it was labeled as hardcore, as heavy metal, thrash metal, speed metal. It got so many different labels. And through the years, their music progressed and they grew and their music matured. I didn't say in a bad way. They've gone through so many changes and they are still true to themselves, though. And lyrically, they still have so much depth and emotion in them. If any of you follow them online, and you can find, especially on I think is where they're active. If you find Mina and you friend her page, it's just everything that she posts is so truthful and so beautiful. And they stay true to themselves, and they're all family people. They're all family, which I think is beautiful, because I don't know if I could have done much in this line of work with any of my family members for 30 years and kept doing it. So I tip my hat to them, and I'm definitely anxious to see them if they come back through again. If not, and they do hit your town or you hear about them coming to a nearby town, I cannot strongly suggest, whether you grew up listening to them like I did or they are newer to you, go see the show, find out what they're all about, support them, support all the bands that are on there. Because if it is still Sick of It All, you're seeing legends, New York hardcore legends in your fucking face. So the show will not disappoint. The merchandise was beautiful. And I can't wait for the new shit to come out, and I'm hoping it does. Alan, I want to thank you personally for having my wife and I at the show. And to the rest of the band, I want to thank all of you personally for 30 years of River Runs Red. I wish you guys all the best. Thank you for tuning in. This has been my opinion. If you got to see the show or you're going to see the show someplace, let me know. I want to know what you thought about the show. I truly do. So this is John, Witching Hour Podcast. Thank you again for your time. Talk to you guys soon. Until then, what do I always say? You don't know because you don't listen to me, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Keep it evil.